Black BLM?
No.
Why not?
Burning cities to the ground doesn't help solve racism.
What? When did they burn a city to the ground? What city did they
All,
burn down?
what was it, like the summer of 2020 or the summer of 2021? They called it, the liberals called it the summer of love, while entire buildings were getting burned to the ground. You didn't know about this? Like in
I
Kenosha
thought I
and
thought you said a city got burned down. Which city got burned down?
do you hear about Portland, Oregon?
I,
They,
Portland
they
still exists. I like
Yeah, but
I
I mean,
like
it was burnt to the ground, but they established like what's called the chop zone for a while, where they essentially like burned a bunch of shit to the ground. They rioted, and then the police, completely ignored them. And then they like built their own city for a while, and then I think the National Guard came in later and all that kind of shit. But you take like,
wait they
do you know Kyle Rittenhouse?
wait. What do you mean they like built a city?
No, they didn't build a city. I see what you're saying. Yeah, what they did was they created like an autonomous zone, right?
Oh,
So they like established their own like socialist government or whatever. Basically, yeah, you should go look it up. Just look up the chop zone. I
wait,
think is what it's called.
wait. But I guess wait. Was it like a real what did they what socialist government did they have? What's
Well,
socialism
what
about?
it was it wasn't even necessarily a government. It was a bunch of kids, college kids or whatever, just getting angry at police, and they ended up running the police out, and they ended up building walls. So like the left has this argument that like, okay, walls are racist and walls are evil, but then the first thing they did when the left took over was build walls around Portland. The first thing they say guns are evil, we should get rid of guns. But the first thing they did was start handing guns out to people to fend off against cops.
I'm not super political myself, but
Right.
didn't like Marx say something along the lines of under no circumstances should the proletariat be unarmed? Because I believe Marx himself believed in the arming of the worker to be able to fight against tyranny.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, Marx obviously, there was a different time. The communists back then are different than the communists now. It was a different time. It was a different kind. It was a different kind
Mm.
of thing. And I'm not a communist, but I would agree with that. That well, yeah, of course, if there's going to be a powerful establishment, then the people need to be armed. But these people are new commies. They're not like the old commies. They don't believe in like the old guard. Like for example, communism had a thing where it was basically like they believed that if you were rich, you were an evil person, and if you were poor, you were a good person. That was the simplified version of communism. But nowadays, they do it by race, not necessarily class. So if you're white, you're the privileged class, and if you're non-white, then you're the underprivileged class. But it's all communism.
I'm curious. I'm curious because I hear it a lot. What is communism and what is socialism, and are they different?
Oh man, that's a really good question, and it's very hard to explain. They are similar. They're not the same. They are similar. I'll put it to you like this. The easiest description is socialism is when they want to redistribute some of the money. Some, not all. Communism is
Mm.
when they want to redistribute all of it.
All the
So,
money
yes, the money.
under
It's a
communism?
redistribution of wealth. Basically, take money from the upper classes to give to the lower classes
Ah,
for
okay.
equality.
I was under the assumption that like the textbook definition of these was like for communism a stateless, classless, moneyless society. There wouldn't even be money. And for socialism, it's the workers own the means of production and it's like workplace democracy and stuff like that. There can still be. I'm not 100% sure if there's still markets under socialism. I think like obviously there's market socialists that believe it's like old. I lied to you a little bit, okay? I'm very into politics. I know a lot.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
can tell. I
I was
don't know anything
I was
about
trolling a
politics. Let me
little
give you the
bit.
definition of socialism.
I'm sorry. I was trolling a little bit. I disagree with most of what you said. Do you want to have like an actual like back and forth about it,
Sure,
or?
sure, bet. Actually, there, this is good. So when you say stateless, classless, first off, those are impossible. Um, Now, I am sort of more on the anarchist side of this, where I don't really believe in like a state or anything like that. Like, I think that a government may be necessary, but unfortunately, the problem with, and I think the left and the right can both agree, that the state has become too powerful. The government has become too powerful and
Well, it
exudes its
depends.
power over the people.
Well, it depends. What aspects of the government's control do you think is them overreaching?
When they censor people on Twitter, when they censor people on Facebook over political opinions,
Wait, wait,
when
wait.
when BLM riots and they call it peaceful protests, but then when Trump supporters do peaceful protests and they call it riots, things like that is an overreach because you're not representing things from a factual perspective. You are like you're implying your own agenda without actual proper context, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, but like Twitter and stuff that aren't run by the government. When someone gets banned off of Twitter for doing
They're
something, it's
all the
not.
same thing. Just because they're run by a different person, I mean, they work in tandem with the government. It's not that they're separate. It's just like the media in America. A media is just another arm of the government. It's not like MSNBC, CBS, Fox News, CNN. They all pretend to be different news organizations. But if you look at what they're saying, besides maybe Fox, they all pretty much agree on everything. They all pretty much agree that January 6th was an insurrection. They all pretty much agree that white people are evil. They all pretty much agree, like, for example, if you look at the Democratic debates from a couple of years ago, I mean, it was funny because they had no real debate because they all agreed with each other on everything. They literally agreed, like they all believed
They
in free
didn't.
health.
I watched those debates myself. They were. Who do you think like the government was behind getting Twitter banned, or Twitter banning somebody that you think the government was behind?
Well, okay, I'll put it to you like this. Like it doesn't seem to me as if they're independent platforms because they act in unison, right? So what I mean is if somebody bans somebody off of YouTube, they're going to ban them off of Twitter, they're going to ban them off of Facebook, they're going to ban them off of like, and you can't tell me that these are separate companies coming up with separate conclusions to ban the same people. Like, for example, don't get me wrong, I feel like if you post pornography or child pornography or gore or something, you should be.
I actually dropped a link to an Economist article in the chat
Okay.
if you want to take a look at it later. It's basically it's Twitter claiming with some data they made public that the Twitter algorithm is actually favorable to conservatives and more right wing figures. It is. The Twitter algorithm gives more lip service to conservatives on the platform.
Well, okay, even if they do, which I doubt, but let's just say they
I mean,
do,
the data's there.
then why do they
I sent it to you.
ban? Well, then why do they ban so many conservatives? Like, why do they ban like one conservative after another?
Why do you think they do it?
Because they have a political agenda.
I think their only agenda is to make money, and I think that
I
if
would
you have
agree with you. I would agree with you some. I do think a lot of that agenda is to make money. Don't get me wrong. I think a lot of that agenda is to make money. But I mean, like for example, who is Mark Zuckerberg or anyone else to fact check someone else when, like for example, I'll give you an example. Do you watch Joe Rogan?
I no.
The vaccine, but younger people shouldn't. Because with young boys, he pulled up like articles saying that young boys get myocarditis after they get the vaccine, and young girls actually have their menstrual cycle gets affected. And actually, how they found this out was from the Jewish community. I think the Hasidic Jewish community. So the Hasidic Jewish community keeps very close tabs on their women's menstrual cycles for some reason, something to do with the religious thing. And basically, the Hasidic Jews complained that right after their women got the vaccine that it was affecting their menstrual cycle, and so that's how we figured out that it was affecting their menstrual cycle. And then Israel did a study confirming that what was it people who have had COVID but then get the vaccine are like 4 times more likely to be endangered than people who just like have natural immunity. Now it's weird that the study
That's not true.
Sure. Just like when they were giving the COVID statistics, and then we found out that the COVID statistics were fucked because basically hospitals were lying about who had COVID and who didn't because the government subsidizes people who have COVID.
No, COVID was underreported. Right now, hospitals currently from unvaccinated people are like reaching capacity. Lots of hospitals across the country, across the world, are reaching capacity and aren't able to take in people who are sick from anything else because there's so many COVID patients there right now who refuse to get vaccinated. As for like the hospitals over-reporting it, this has been like a talking point since like 2019, like early 2020. Sorry, and it just isn't true. Like COVID wasn't getting over-reported.
That is 100% not true. Even like there's tons of like if you look at Project Veritas, they literally exposed Cherry Health when Cherry Health literally got caught hiring actors to take COVID tests. Here's my personal opinion about COVID. I don't think it's a hoax. I do think it's a real issue, and I do really think that it can kill people. The issue I have is it doesn't really seem to affect young people. Young, healthy people seem to brush this thing off very easily. Bob Saget just died recently after having his COVID booster shot. So my question is, if the vaccine is so good, why are so many people dying after getting the vaccine? Like, what I'm saying is, if you take the vaccine, you're not supposed to get COVID, right? So why do so many people, Colin Powell?
Wait, hold on. You can still get COVID if you get vaccinated. That's why booster shots are coming out right now. And even the booster shots, nothing gives you 100. You literally can't. There's no such thing as 100% coverage from COVID. But the whole point of getting vaccinated is to not get COVID. The main concern for young people when it comes to getting COVID is that we aren't entirely sure what getting COVID is going to do to young people in the long term. That's the main concern. Kids may be able to kick COVID like it's the flu. We don't know if kids are going to end up having serious heart conditions and blood diseases in the future.
We don't know if these vaccines are going to have detrimental side effects years later. I'll give you an example. So, for example, Ritalin, Adderall. So I've got ADHD, so I was prescribed Adderall or whatever, right? And I've got another guy that's prescribed Adderall, been taking it for years, and he's going out of his fucking mind, like literally, as in someone who does crystal meth. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but basically,
Adderall is meth.
It is meth, exactly.
Yeah.
But he's exuding brain problems as if someone who has meth. Like, he's thinking people are out to kill him. He's thinking people are out to get him. Like, he literally needs to be like institutionalized,
Well, I'll say I'm going to preface this by saying the only qualifications I have in this field are AP psychology in high school. As for vaccines, comparing vaccines to like medicine that affects your brain is very, very different. The problem that I have when it comes to vaccine hesitancy is that right now you're getting large, well-known figures in certain spaces that are getting lots of eyes on them have said things like the COVID vaccine turns your skin magnetic when you get it. Like just weird shit like that just is easy to disprove. I put a magnet up to my skin when I got the vaccine just to check, and it didn't stick. But like, I guess when you see anything from people claiming crazy shit like that too, well, we just don't know yet. I guess it worries me because I can understand being worried about like a medicine that just came out recently, and there hasn't been a lot of time to see the long-term effects and everything.
Well, we rushed. Listen, can you not admit, and I'm sure you can at least admit, because we're obviously on opposite sides of the political aspect, which is fine, but I'm sure we can both agree that this vaccine was extremely rushed.